Good morning. Just fixing my microphone here so you guys hear me. Good morning and welcome to the Profit Lab podcast. Woohoo! We always start our day with any of my podcasts. Actually, I start always with a great rock music. So last Thursday on the other podcast, Maurice Gabriel CPA, I got to play a little bit of Motley Crue. So that was very cool. It was very exciting. So anyway, hello guys. I am your host, Marie Torossian. I'm a CFO, an auditor, a certified public accountant, and a chartered global management accountant. I serve the entrepreneurs and the business owners through my CPA firm, Maurice Gabriel CPA, and my management consulting company, The Profit Lab. So the Profit Lab podcast serves to expand our mission to empower entrepreneurs by bringing their stories to the masses. We are thrilled to tell your story to inspire, empower, and uplift other entrepreneurs. So please go ahead and check out our website, theprofitlab.biz/podcast, so you can listen to the podcast on the go. So just a quick summary of what we've done so far. We launched the Profit Lab podcast on August 2nd when I spoke about my entrepreneurial journey, and I shared some valuable takeaways from the challenges that I faced. So since then, we've been bringing different entrepreneurs. So I want to make sure you go and check out the past four other episodes that happened, where we had Hong Kong Enterprises, we had Hip Maps, and also to the Bay Payments. So we are bringing great entrepreneurs to you. And if you want to be on the show, if you're an entrepreneur, you want to be on the show, make sure to send us an email to support@theprofitlab.biz. Today, August 30th, is our 5th episode, and we are live as usual on Facebook at theprofitlab.biz, ProfitLabBiz, on LinkedIn, Maurice Gabriel CPA, CGMA, and on YouTube channel, Maurice Gabriel CPA. So make sure to subscribe, follow, like, and share the podcast so that other people can enjoy the conversations and learn from those stories. So with that, my guest today is someone very special, and I actually alluded to him, joining me on an interview when I was talking about my journey. This gentleman is someone that has become a great friend for me. And I've learned so much from him. So I can't wait for this interview to happen. I'm so excited. So with that, I want to introduce to you Maurice Gabriel Alexander, founder and CEO of The Revenue Sage. He is a sales and marketing executive for over 20 years. He's been building powerful sales strategies and developing successful teams that utilize emerging technologies and cutting-edge systems to drive revenue and product results. Maurice has structured mission-critical sales processes and trained sales leaders for BMW, Audi, IBM, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and Cerberus Capital. And so he has enjoyed empowering good sales teams and leading them to become great sales teams, as small as 5 and as large as 200. So with that, Maurice, welcome.
Hey, Marie.
To the Profit Lab podcast. You got me all tumbled up there.
Listen, I was all excited too. I was like, man, who are we waiting for? Who's this special person?
Let's go.
Let's do this. Hey, I really appreciate being on your podcast. As I was mentioning earlier, I'm not a podcast type person, not because I just literally don't have the time, and I have to be very selective with who and how I hop on. So, but I really appreciate it. And I was almost, I almost started crying when you asked me, but I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Yes, we have a very, I think, special friendship. We go back, several years. It's funny because where we met is kind of where I, really started to understand and internalize that love for entrepreneurship, right? Being surrounded by so many entrepreneurs, as most of the members were at the chamber, right? And so that's really where I fell in love. Prior to that, not that I hadn't been an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur. I think entrepreneurship, in my opinion, starts with you internally, right?
Yes.
And what I mean by that is one of the things I constantly harp on with all my business development folks or anyone, whether I'm coaching or mentoring, leaders like yourself. At the end of the day, one of the things I say is, it's not about the company. It's not about what it says on the sign on top. It's not about any of those things. It's about two things. One, the client value that you're providing to the client,
Sure.
and
Yep.
two, your internal brand, meaning in my case, it's Mo Inc., right? Maurice Inc.
Yes.
It is. I work for myself as an entrepreneur,
Absolutely.
whether I have, a sign above me that says IBM or whatever the case is, I am still responsible and accountable for myself and my production and my success, right, out there.
Yes.
And so that's what drives me. And I think that's the very first thing that you have to recognize as an entrepreneur. If you can feel comfortable with, it's my, I, I'm the company, I'm the brand, then it all starts from there. You have probably maybe 50% of the battle won as far as being an entrepreneur. The other 50%, I got to be honest with you, it's going to be bloody and it's going to be messy, but it's well worth it, right? And so it is what it is. You got to get in there. I tell folks, being an entrepreneur, just like in sales, it's a full contact sport. You're gonna get hit a
It's
couple
a full
times. It
contact.
is. It's full contact. So, and that's probably why you take
I know.
the taekwondo and all that, right?
I know.
That's full contact. And
It
I tell
is.
folks it is. Being an entrepreneur, being in sales, it's full contact. You're gonna get hit a couple times. You got to be able to
Oh
take those
yeah.
licks. And
Oh yeah.
and lick them off and keep going. The match isn't over, the fight isn't over, whatever the case is, right? So it's full contact. It's you don't sit on the sidelines. You cannot be an entrepreneur as sitting on the
Absolutely.
sidelines, right? And looking at the playbook and all those things and kind of directing folks. That's not being an entrepreneur. It's getting out there and you know getting a lick in and or taking a lick. So it is what it is. So, but I'm glad I'm on the podcast, especially when you told me the topic is to empower entrepreneurs. That's kind of what I do, and part of where my passion is at, right, empowering entrepreneurs and helping them. And so
Yeah.
here we are. So cool. I'm
And here
happy
we
to
are.
talk to you, Marie. I know you probably have tons of questions for me. I know you always
I'm
do, and
ready.
I love it because I don't mind sharing with you and your listeners,
Awesome.
obviously. Cool.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
where do
And
we
yeah,
begin?
we begin with getting to know you, Maurice, the person, the
Oh,
values, all of
shoot.
that.
Well, I appreciate that. So as I kind of walk through, I started, maybe that might be the most sensible place. I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but about 22, 23 years ago. And I wasn't supposed to be in sales. That wasn't I was supposed to be like
Sounds
you in
like me.
in finance. Exactly. I actually made it pretty, made a pretty decent living and made it on Wall Street. I was called, the golden boy. I mean, there's several things, right? They even nicknamed me Mo Money, and I mean, it's phenomenal. It was a great feeling. And one of my mentors, just pushed me out and said, "Hey, listen, I have it took me from behind the desk, if you will, and
Hmm.
and doing the actual work, and said, listen, your personality, and all this stuff. I mean, you have all the makings of what. And I took heart to that, and I took that to heart. And, I kind of dug in a little bit more into psychology, right?
Mm,
Because a lot of things that we were doing has to do with
true. True.
psychology of the buyer and all those things, right? And not just psychology of the buyer, but also like how to motivate teams and how to keep them,
Yes.
sustainable and growing with,
Absolutely.
and a lot of folks don't understand this, but growing too much is bad too, right? And growing too little, you're dying. So it's a combination. So being able to motivate them and get that right push, so you don't tilt over one way or the other. And so
Right.
again, I didn't fall in love with psychology. I fell in love with how it helps me relate to folks. That was
Hmm.
such a long time ago. I probably remember very little things, and that's not true because I use a lot of
You
those
use them.
techniques
I
and
was
I
gonna
use them
say.
all the time. They just become second nature, right?
Some of
So
the
I don't.
questions you ask me is like, that sounds psychology.
It is. And so but you bring those learnings and those lessons, and as they pushed me out into sales, I was a little bit hesitant, but I think that, and not I think, I know, confirmed by Mark Cuban, right? We all know who Mark Cuban
Hmm.
is,
Yes.
billionaire, owner of the is it the Houston Mavericks and the basketball team and all that stuff, and he's on the Shark Tank and all that stuff. And it's
Yes,
funny because
yes.
about a week ago, I saw an Instagram post where he's talking about, as an entrepreneur, what's the most important skill, and he flat out said, "Listen, selling." Selling is the one thing as
Yes,
an entrepreneur that you must be.
you need to know.
Wow, that makes sense. You kind of have to have
Yes,
some clients, new blood, and all that stuff. And so I
absolutely.
I learned that very early on. Selling is, and again, some people, selling or sales, is a very bad word, right? It's
Right,
it,
right,
because they've been approached or been mismanaged or almost neglected by sales folks that they've dealt with in the past, right?
right.
Professionals don't do that. Professional sales folks, are, it's more about you than them. That's that's
True.
that's that's the hallmark of a real professional salesperson, right? And so I took on that challenge, and I've again excelled and managed with many teams. I've built teams across the world, not just across the country, for many companies, and it was very successful. Loved life, but it wasn't until I ended up at the chain. I tell this story a lot. I
Yes,
do, and because that moment in time, roughly about 5 years ago, changed
yes.
my life. Right, I didn't start out as an entrepreneur then. I had some of the nebulous concepts, right?
Right.
These, need the sales, got to have my dad was an entrepreneur. He was, a general contractor, and his dream was to pass on the company. I didn't want to, right? I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be known as, the guy who, took on his dad company, and not that it was a bad thing. I just, that wasn't my flavor. I wanted to do my thing, and
Sure.
blaze my own trail. And so I did that. But I've learned a lot, and I took a lot of the lessons now going backwards in time. A lot of those lessons that my father taught me, my dad, he taught me a lot of great lessons being an
Yes.
entrepreneur, and I was able to apply a lot of those lessons throughout, my career. But it wasn't until I got to the team where I saw, oh my God, there's a whole world of small, medium-sized businesses out here, and they're all needing help,
Absolutely.
all kinds of help. And I started to dive in. We rebuilt a lot of the packaging packages for their product offerings, how we were going to help these small businesses out in the community. And it, as we kept having more conversations, more and more conversations with members and even non-members, we started to dig in, what are the real needs. And I have a feeling that I've, with a couple of my partners and folks like yourself, that we've been able to pinpoint,
Right.
5 or 6 of those places where it's like, oh, this is a game changer, right? These are
Yes.
game changing small things, but it gets you to the next level. And a lot of times that's where entrepreneurs, fall down or lose a little bit of that faith, and or keeps them up at night, where they think, wow, am I really doing the right thing? Like, am I doing it? How am I supposed to? Because there's no manual for entrepreneurship, right? There isn't.
Yeah, there
um, there,
isn't. There
there's
isn't.
there's a lot of folks that are coaches, mentors, and they're all great. You have to have someone. You know, it's better to have
Absolutely.
someone,
None.
right, than not have anyone at all, right? And at
Right.
very minimum, that person can keep you accountable. And so
Yes.
I learned a lot, and that's where my love for entrepreneurship really, really took off. To the point where, again, almost at the onset, right before COVID, my mom got very sick, and I had to take a leave, and within that
Yes.
leave, I just figured, maybe I can help entrepreneurs in a different way, using my skill set, right? My skill set in marketing and
Yes.
sales. And so that's kind of what I've been doing over the last, 3 years. It's been an interesting ride. I've had, a lot of ups and downs, and we've even developed a software that's come out of it. I mean, just again, exploring things, right? Is being very
Yeah.
innovative with the idea that whatever I produce or whatever I can put out there is going to help other entrepreneurs. And so that's where we are
Yes.
today. So
Yes.
that's kind of
Absolutely.
like that's kind of my story in 5 minutes. Probably took a little
And
longer, but it is a very long. It's a long story. Again, 25 years. It's a long time, but
it is a long time,
you
yeah.
know,
But I'm so glad because you said it too. Your mentor, where you were working at the time,
mhm,
noticed something in you that, and then helped you kind of develop that other skill. That is like, well, you don't realize you have this skill, but you got. So it's great. I'm so glad that that mentor you had early on in your life, and it's kind of repeatable to actually my guest from last week, which you mentioned the same thing. On my end, I didn't get that mentor other than my dad, who was similar to your dad. He had his own little business. I didn't have that mentor until much later on, you know? Like I had someone like you when we met at the chamber, we were like talking, we had so many things like ideas in common, like we were able to work through
Sure.
the sales and the numbers. And like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy can actually understand the budget that I'm putting together. I don't have to fight to teach something, you know, versus maybe you may have thought, I don't know, you could tell me, but like I was very open to learning from you some of the sales things. I was like, wow, I've never realized sales had such specific processes, structure, and I never thought of sales that way because my
Absolutely.
brain works very strategic, like very structured, and because you know I use
So,
a lot of analysis. So
yeah.
I was like so impressed at the time, and I'm so glad we got to meet and work on so many things together.
Yeah, so I would say a couple of things from that experience, right? In collaborating with you. For me, on my end, it was also refreshing to be able to talk to a CPA that could put on a different, CPA, CFO, just put on a different hat and think about in terms of, again, sales has certain processes and procedures. It's not just about numbers. It obviously is about the numbers, but how do we get to those
How to
numbers?
get there?
There's almost a science behind it too, right? And
Yes,
so that's the thing that in order to explain that to someone who's boxed in, kind of like a typical typical CFO, it's a little harder. But the conversation flowed. You understood? Okay, so there's inflows from here, and this is kind of how things happen, right? And what's refreshing is that again, it wasn't a full hard press on. I had to almost train you. No, it flowed, and that might have opened, right? Might have opened a little bit of like, wait, if there's a process, if there's procedures, just like there
right,
is in accounting and finance and all this
exactly,
stuff, it's replicatable, it's duplicatable.
right,
You just
right,
have to have the right formulas in the right cells, and then
right,
you're done. That's the thing with sales in a way, right? A lot of it is replicatable, it's duplicatable, and again, if you have the right formula, you're done. You just have to rinse, wash, and repeat, whether you're adding a new product, whatever the case is. Understanding your obviously your target audience and your client is of utmost
absolutely,
important. That's the value that you bring, but the process itself on how to acquire a client, or just walking them down that, what folks call that funnel, um, is always going to be the same, more or less, right? It could change here, but if you have it down to a science, a formula, then I can now put in front of you a CFO or even an investor financials,
right,
solid financials with forecasts that I know I'm comfortable. Hey, we're going to hit these numbers, right? And so
yes,
that
yes,
that at the end of the day, right? What you and I put down on paper means nothing if they're not achievable and they're not
right,
realistic, or what. So that's where the magic happens, I think. So that for us, on my end, that was great, and that you were able to capture and, again, interpret a lot of those things. Help me interpret that with the board and say, okay, this is where we're moving in this direction. It really was. It's refreshing. A lot of times um, you have to fight, folks, when it's
yes,
something new. You do. And believe it or not, even at some of the bigger companies, right, Fortune 1000 and 500s, they know there are processes and procedures. Now not so much, right? Because here's one thing that I've noticed in the last, yeah, I would say maybe 6 7 years,
hmm,
with technology moving so fast, sales has become a lot more data driven. And so
yes,
data is numbers, right? And so you
yes,
fall back on someone like myself who understands the processes and the procedures and everything else, but also understands the number and can interpret the data.
yes,
I see the formula and I can replicate formulas very easily. I mean, it's almost like I have a cheat code when I use the data. And a lot of companies are now starting to get smarter about the data, using the data,
right,
using technology, using CRMs and things like that to automate, but
yes,
not just also automate their process so it saves time, but also they're doing it to be more precise, right?
right, because
Precise,
they
like,
can understand behavior too from those automations. There's so much you
uh,
can learn. Which one did they click? which one should be
which
following up with another automation. There's just
absolutely,
so much information in there on the buyer's behavior inside of the CRM if they're using it correctly.
if they're using it right. And so, and if you have a little more, sophisticated CRM that, has some triggers and things like that, that's off,
Right.
based off of, machine learning or AI or both, that's one step that you don't have to do because you've kind of pre-programmed. If this happens and this happens, and it reads, some of the psychological behavior, and it also learns. And so now your complete process that's systematized, flows, and it's frictionless. I wouldn't say completely frictionless, but a lot less frictionless, right? And so that's important. Getting to the prospects or the folks, your potential clients, future clients, the right information at the right time in their tone that they're going to understand, right? Because
True.
not everyone, as you and I know, when we're dealing with folks, there's so many different personalities, right? But
True.
for example, just in the learning personality, right? Um, we talk about our kids all the time, like my daughter's a lot more visual, um, as opposed to someone who's more auditory or whatever the case is, right? There's
True.
learning
True.
styles and there's,
Same.
personalities on how you take in information, disc profiles, things like all those things kind of can be built into and coalesced into a system. And if your CRM or your process, right, your sales process that you've implemented, whether it's through a CRM or a live person assistant, whatever the case is, whatever that
Right.
process is, you input that line of formula or code. Oh my God, it makes life a little easier for you because again, you're hitting, you're giving your future client the right information at the right time that they're
Right.
searching for, they're looking for, I mean, they're needing at this moment in time. That makes you 10 times more valuable, right?
Absolutely.
Not that I was, suggested by the 10x behind you or anything like that, but it makes you 10 times more valuable. But it's wonderful, when you can help and accelerate that, right? You create pipeline velocity. I mean, just things get better. And
Yes.
that's why I'm so, well, passionate about sales and marketing, right? Because it's kind of like the lifeblood
It sure
of
is.
businesses. And I'm also very passionate about it because a lot of the smaller, medium-sized businesses, they don't have the resources that a Fortune 5,000 or Fortune 1, who's going to come in there? Like,
Absolutely.
for example, like
Yeah.
someone like an IBM or an Audi, they have no problems writing me, a check for, six
Six
figures, right?
figures.
Six figures to come in for 2 or 3 months and train some of their new sales managers that are going to be,
Yeah.
like, again, things like, which is fine, but that's not how the economy's run, right?
Right.
Audi, BMW, and these big companies, the Fortune 500s, they aren't the only ones in the economy. There are a lot of folks. And then I look back and I say, man, I wish my dad would have had someone, that would have helped him when he first started, when he got to this
Yes.
country, right? Like
Yes.
you and I have had
Yes.
that
That's exact.
conversation many
Yes.
times.
Yes. Many
If there
times.
were someone out there that would have helped them in that sense. And I've taken a step back also, like, well, there were chambers back then, but back then chambers were different and they're still limited because a lot of
Yes.
times, they're quasi governmental and there's a lot of things,
True.
right?
True. In other
They
countries are like that. Yes.
they
Yes.
can provide a lot of assistance and a lot of help. But on top of that, you got to be honest, they're not sales and marketing engines. They can't
No.
build those things,
No.
right? So you have to go to someone, right, who can build a sales and marketing engine if what you're doing is selling product or services. If you're not selling
Absolutely.
product or services, you don't need to sell anything, right? But I don't know any businesses that don't sell. I
They have
just
to
don't
sell
have.
something.
Somebody's got to sell something to somebody. Someone's got to hand over some money or cash or credit, whatever the case
Yeah.
is, right? In order to keep that going. And it's 44. It's between 41 and 44%, which, by the way, has eroded in the last 10 years. The amount of small businesses and entrepreneurs that are out there, right? And that number can vary. That
Right.
number varies depending on the city, the metro, right? We happen to be in the South Florida, which is a
Yes.
large metro. That
Yes.
number's probably, smaller or larger, right? If you move into like a Madison, Wisconsin, for example, or a smaller MSA, or, that number of small businesses might be a lot higher
Higher.
percentage
Right.
wise. rise because you don't have a lot of Fortune 5,000 or even larger corporations with over 500 or 600 employees until that small business number increases. They need
True.
help. So for some, for a city like Madison, Wisconsin, I'm using that. I don't, I've never
Example.
even been there. Um, I haven't. I mean, the name
It
doesn't
just
call
came
my
to
blood.
mind.
It just came to mind. Madison, Wisconsin, whatever. Who knows? Um, I thought of it as a small city. You know, those small businesses are critical to the economy of that
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
city, right? And so more so than it is in in a larger MSA in New York, right? My small dry cleaner may not take down the economy in New York City or Manhattan, but my small dry cleaner may be the only dry cleaner in Madison, Wisconsin, or or the
Yeah.
outskirts, right? So it makes a difference where you're at as well. And
Yeah.
so um, I wish someone would have helped my dad with a
Hmm.
lot of those things. He did well, but he could have done so much more in a shorter period of time. And I think you and I had that conversation once upon a time when after about what was it, like close to 3 years already being on your own and all that stuff. And
Yes.
you went through your pains and challenges of what it took to get you to where you're at today. And I mean, at one point I'm it's very pivotal, and you and I have had this conversation where I asked you, Marie, I gotta ask because I'm just blown away, how much time, effort, and money, if we had to ball this all up, did it
Yes.
take to get you to where you're at today? And I think it was like somewhere in the ballpark of like 200,000 is what, when you did
Yes.
the math.
Yeah.
And my next question is, would that, like, if someone would have came with a package solution for you to get you, and not 100,000, not 200,000,
Right.
if they would have said, hey, look, it's X amount of dollars, would that have gotten you faster to where you're at today? And your answer was like, oh, hell yes. It wasn't hell yes, but it was like something like you were jumping up and down,
Yes.
like it would have been, because that would have saved you a lot of time.
Absolutely.
You maybe not so much money, right? Because
Yeah.
my opinion is, again, sales and marketing, if you're watching the dollars properly and you're getting a good ROI and you know where you're at,
Yes.
it's not an expense. It's not. It's an investment in your company
It
and your
truly is.
growth, in your growth.
Yes.
The growth of your company. You cannot grow your company without investing in it in the sales and marketing. It just doesn't happen. I'm sorry. That
Yeah.
any entrepreneur or any person that thinks that they're going to become an entrepreneur
They
and
need
is
to
going to
know
do it
this.
organically and just no, you got to invest. You're either time, talent, or treasure. You're either going to invest your time, your
Right.
talent, or your treasure, one of the, or
Right.
all
And
three
I
in a
did
lot
all
of
three.
cases. You did all three. And
All
but
three.
that's why you're at where you're at, right? You're in a different space than if you had not. And so that's very important to bring forth, right? um, where I see that mentality a lot, some of the smaller businesses, they think that they're going to get it done on their own, and they can,
It's
but
gonna
you're going to
take
have to
time.
learn.
Yes. Yes.
It's going to take you a long time, and you're
Yes.
going to have to learn. You're going to have to invest. So there's no way around investing. You're either investing in your self knowledge, learning it, and then lost opportunities, because while you're learning, opportunities are just right. And so it's still an investment. I don't care how you look at it, just slicing it a different
It sure
way.
is.
And so that's the reason why we built what we built. It didn't start out that way. It actually started out in exclusively sales, marketing, and coaching, leadership, if you will. And then it kind of moved into, well, there's other places where we can help. And some of those places, if we've done a lot of research, just the digital marketing piece has been so
Yes.
critical
Super
for a lot of
important.
business. I can see
This
where,
day and
like, in
age.
your
Oh my God.
business,
Yep.
absolutely. I mean, if you don't have it, you don't have a digital
Don't
footprint.
exist.
You don't
It
exist. If
don't
you're not on
exist.
Google, you don't exist. I mean, you don't exist. I mean, that's just a reality, right? And what's crazier about it is that as we fast forward, 5 years out in time,
Yes.
right? The trend, because of, again, the folks, millennials, gens, everyone is going to continue. I just don't see Facebook, Google, or any of these things kind of shrinking. It's
Right.
not going to happen, right? And so, and as you know, as my daughter gets older, she does a lot more on her phone and her laptop and all those things, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the way of the world,
That's the
right?
trend. Yeah.
It was funny because I went to a friend's house and his mom happened to be visiting there, and she pulled out her checkbook for something. I can't remember what it was, and everyone there almost looked around like,
What is that?
"What is that? It's a checkbook. We haven't seen a checkbook in ages." And then it was funny because I was having a conversation with someone else. It was like, as that generation moves on, we may never see checks.
No.
When
No.
you do business for a lot of other businesses, you're as a CPA, and think about it, you don't see as many checks floating around those financial people doing things electronically, right? They hop on their
Everything electronic.
phone,
Yep.
they can either Venmo,
Zelle,
Zelle, I mean, just
Venmo, wires, ACHs.
I was getting a haircut the other day, and the gentleman in the chair next to me gets up and says, "Okay, well, how much was it done?" And the gentleman says, "Oh, it was $30, and says, "Okay, cool." Pulls out his phone and says,
Yep.
I'm gonna send you some money." And the guy, without blinking, says, "Yeah." And he turns around and says, "I just to me, as if I was listening. I was, but I wasn't listening like intently. I was just listening to everybody, all the everything and going on." But he says, because it was a message for me, he says, "I just don't really have a need to carry a wallet or or cash or anything. I can do everything on my
Yeah.
phone." I'm like,
Yes.
interesting.
That's the new generation. They
That's
don't
the
carry
new
anything.
generation. And so
Yes.
when they
Everything is
want
on
to
the phone.
find something,
On the phone.
they on the phone. Yeah, I'm going to go out to eat. I'm going to hop on Yelp or Google, or right. I'm on my phone or I'm on my computer, whatever the case is, right during the day. Just again, so if you don't have that digital presence, and it doesn't have to be the largest, but you have to have some. And
Right.
if depending on your business, there are areas that are more critical and there are areas that are more efficient, right?
Right.
So for some industries, content is king.
Yes.
And putting out a lot of content is very valuable. For other areas, content isn't necessarily. It might be SEO or it might be something completely different, right? But it's still in the digital space. Um,
Absolutely.
a lot of things that folks don't understand or just they wouldn't. There's a lot of research been done. Email campaigns. I went back with a Fortune, one of these Fortune 500s, and they very specifically said, "Hey, let's look at the whole process." And they had an awesome process already, but I was able to point out one area where they weren't, utilizing all the resources and in capturing all the revenue, and it was email campaigns. They had run 2 email campaigns in the previous year, and percentage wise, the ROI was larger in that bucket than all the other buckets, all the other things that they had done. And I was like,
They should be focusing there.
hello, boom, the ROI is sick here. Why are we not why are we not doing more of
I
this?
know.
Oh, we're
Every
not that
email I check the percentages.
we're
Which ones are opening up? What percentage? What are the clicks? Where are
and
they
they're
going?
yes, and they were Fortune
Gotta
500,
check
and still, and
everything.
so they realized, okay, we need to bring in someone for specifically to analyze the data
Right.
because again, they have Fortune 500, their databases are ridiculous, right?
Right.
They
Right.
need
Right. Of
someone
course.
very specifically for that.
Sure.
That may
Sure.
not be the case for you, and it may not be the
Right.
case for John Doe down the block who has either a restaurant or some other type
Right.
of business
Right.
or a
Could
law
be
firm,
something
right?
small. Yeah. Yeah.
Completely different, right? And so I think the other thing that I learned with my time there at the chamber, which was critical as well as far as like small businesses and applying some of these things, is I realized, and I was baffled. That's the word, baffled. I mean, just I jaw dropping. Companies that are already in the 3, 4, $5 million range generating. They're not huge. 5 or 6 employees, but they're generating um, have no marketing strategy, no marketing campaign, none.
Nope.
And I'm okay. So
It is.
I'm not even gonna ask how you guys what like is there a
Got there.
sales process or what? No, nothing. And I'm like, so this is just basically because God loves you. I
Yeah.
literally
You just
caught
got
myself
there and you're
saying
gonna
that.
be stuck there.
I literally said this to someone. I was like, so you've gotten here because God really loves you because you have no plan. How are
Yeah.
you going to grow? And so sitting with them, which was not technically not part of our space, right? As a chamber, most
Right, right,
chambers,
right.
we made it part of our SOP and what we're going to do for members. We put together, call them mini marketing campaigns,
Mm,
so that way they could maximize, with the services or the benefits that they were getting from the chamber, they could maximize their outcome or their revenue. And so we would tie in pieces of marketing campaigns there, or components, if you will. You got to go to these networking events. These are going to be important for you to be at because these are the type of people you want. Just
right,
laid it
right.
out for them,
Kind of
right?
give them a
And,
guide, a little guide
uh,
to kind of follow.
and that made all the difference in the world, because then at that point they were able to see, which is something extremely important for entrepreneurs and business owners. Where's my ROI?
Right, in a
Right,
membership.
in a membership, which is very
Woo.
difficult to find, right? That
Yes,
was the eternal battle.
I,
How do I
yes,
prove ROI with a membership? And so
yes,
part of that was tying it back to, look, we have some metrics, we have some
right.
some goals, we have a strategy that we're going to put in place. And when they would come back and say, well, have we put together, have we put in place or put in action some of this strategy that we've put? Yes. Okay, cool. What else do we need to do? Or no. So if we don't work
So,
the
yeah,
plan isn't going to work
exactly.
for you, type of thing, right? And so
Right, right, right.
again, it's like anything else in all of business. You got to get in there and do it, right? So
Yeah.
if I were gonna say, hey, look, the things that I've learned throughout my process, I would say that I hiring right, um, hiring right from the right space, right? My
Hmm.
space, I have to hire folks that are like me. What do I mean? I'm looking for people that are PhDs. Literally, I'm looking for people who have PhDs, and I think my partner is actually in the process of trying to copyright or coin that, but folks that are passionate.
Passionate,
Yep. Folks that are hungry. Yep. And folks that are
hungry.
hungry, they have to be hungry. If they're not hungry,
Yes.
they're and especially in sales and marketing, right? And more so
Oh, yeah.
sales than anything else, right? But hungry, right? And people that are absolutely determined or disciplined. And I prefer use the word discipline.
Discipline.
And
Yes.
I'll tell you why, because that's another area where if someone isn't disciplined, like, look, I used to go to the gym, and I was just prodded today to go to the gym again. And I just don't have the time. But we've all had moments where we've needed to do something or wanted to do something. Um, but it's just not, we don't feel it. Our attitude isn't there, right? But if you're disciplined enough, you're going to go through the motions. You're going to run the plays. You're going to make the calls. You're going to send out. You're going to do what you need to do. That discipline is what gets you out of bed in the morning, Marie. It's what gets you,
Yes.
even though, like you're having challenges with whatever is coming,
Yep.
in your way. It's that discipline that's going to get you to sit there and, hop on the phone and talk to your clients and coach them, mentor, and do everything you need to do. It's that discipline. The passion and the hunger obviously come into play, but that discipline is what really ties it together. So
Yeah.
I hire folks and I look folks to be on my team. I use the word hire very loosely, but to be part of my team, right?
Yes.
Because when I
Yes.
work with an entrepreneur, I look at it as I'm
He's on
bringing
my
you
team.
on board to my team. We're going to work and we're going to collaborate. And if
Yeah.
you, as an entrepreneur, aren't, you're not PhD material, the results are going to be I'm serious. The results aren't going to be
True.
there. Where
No,
you're
it's
not,
true.
you're not going to follow through, and it doesn't matter what I lay out. It's not going to work for you because you're not going to follow through. And so I look for folks that are PhD material. They're passionate, hungry, and disciplined about their business. That's very
Yeah.
important to me, right? Whether they're working with me internally in my team or externally, we're collaborating, like with you, for example. If you
Hmm.
weren't passionate, if you weren't hungry, or you weren't disciplined, can't work with you. It's
Yeah.
not my thing.
Yeah. We would
I,
not have been able to collaborate on so many things that we've worked, together
absolutely,
outside of the
absolutely.
chamber the past 2 years. And I wanted to make sure to read out the your company website so our listeners that didn't get to see the banner go by can actually check it out. So make sure, guys, to check out the website, therevenuesage.com. Therevenuesage.com. That way you can, kind of look at what Maurice is working on. And there's a lot more other things that he has. And gotten to a release and launch yet, but it's in the works. But so far, at least you can go and check out the revenuesage.com on the work that he's doing. And also, if you would like to get a consultation with him, he does offer a 15-minute consultation for absolutely complimentary. Just email him, Maurice at therevenuesage.com. That's Maurice at therevenuesage.com.
Absolutely. I appreciate that plug, Marie. Yeah,
Yeah.
anyone who is looking for a consultation, if they believe they have, a PhD,
PhD.
a PhD
I'm
for
going
their
to start
business,
using that term, my
yeah,
friend.
PhD, then I'm happy to spend 15 minutes. And my questions are they're going to be tough questions, you know, but I'm going to get to the bottom of it within 15 minutes. I'm going to tell you, hey, look, I can help you, or I'm going to point you in the direction where you should
Right.
go and look for help. Because at the end of the day,
Right.
like I said, my passion is to help small businesses, uh, that creating that impact. And even if I can't help, that's okay. I'm not meant to help everybody, but if I can point you in the right direction, that's still a way of helping you. And
It's
so
valuable. That's valuable
I'm happy.
time. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
I might
Absolutely.
be saving you a lot of time, just bouncing around looking for the answer, where I
Exactly.
where I've already seen it, or I've seen someone else who's already been through that, and I can just point you there and save you some time and heartache. I would say the other lesson I've learned, Marie, now that we're talking about that, is again this just my father had this saying. He would always walk around, because again he was a general contractor. He would walk around and say, just measure twice, cut once, right?
Oh, yeah. I've heard that
You,
term a lot. Yeah.
oh my God, he almost beat it into us. Again, being a general contractor, right, he couldn't be off, on measurements or anything. But
Yes.
he applied it to us, and he applied it in life all the way around. And what I remember having one conversation with him. I went back. I was like, "But Dad, you told me, like measure twice, cut once." And he looked at me and said, "The key there is at the end, you have to cut. You take action at the end."
Yes.
And so the Nike, right? Just do it. At the end, we can plan it. We can, lay out
But
the
you got to do it.
strategy and everything. Somebody's got to do
Exactly.
it. We got to,
Exactly.
take some action. So, and if you can take action, even when it feels uncomfortable, um, you're still going to be far better off than where you are today, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you measure twice, right? And when I say
Right.
measure twice, did you measure the risk properly? Because that's really the only thing as an entrepreneur
Yes.
I'm concerned about. Did I lose a little bit of money? Probably. I've made some mistakes. I made actually my very first mistake was a $250,000 mistake, um, and my dad bailed me out. And so measure twice, cut once, right? I was able to pay him back, but
You
it
learn
was a
from that.
did I learn? So I did. I learned not I learned a
Yeah.
lot, and I came back stronger than that. My next move, really, I was able to make that back and add a little on top. So I learned. It was a $250,000 lesson, right? And so,
Yes.
but I had to do it. Had I
Yes.
not done it, I wouldn't have learned.
Right. Right.
That lesson could have cost me $2 or $3 million down the road.
Absolutely.
It
Absolutely.
could
Yes.
have, had I not learned the $250,000 one. So
Absolutely.
lessons, sometimes they're costly, and that's okay, but they're still lessons. They could be saving you from something else in the future, right? Um, so, but doing it just as an entrepreneur, I think that if you don't do it, you just can't even be called an entrepreneur. That's what
Yes.
separates an entrepreneur from other folks, right? The fact that they can actually take the action, do it, move forward. Otherwise,
Yes.
you're just like everybody else. You're a wannabe. And there's a lot of wannabes out there,
A
and
lot of wannabes.
it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I would say, but that wannabes aren't they don't have PhDs. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really they're just wannabe. And so I would say those are some of the lessons I've learned. What other questions do you think I'd be able to answer that would be
Yeah,
very
this was a
valuable to
really
your
great
listeners?
conversation. We didn't have to structure it so much with questions. You've covered
Okay.
your challenges. Yeah, if you want to give us a little bit on specifically, let's say a little quick snippet on the revenue sage itself, like what it was it that it offers, and who are the customers that you are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. So the customers that we typically help, again, number one, you have to have a PhD, right? Check
Of
that
course.
box off, right? You have a business, you have a business, you have a PhD, then again, we might be able to help you. We typically help businesses that are looking to enhance uh, their digital
Footprint.
marketing profile,
Hmm.
their footprint. We do it
Yeah.
in different ways. It's not just social media or paid advertising or anything like that. We look at where you're at, um, holistically in the process. We developed, an actual ICP, um, with you, and a marketing plan. So it's not just a half-ass type thing. We work with companies that, in the end, really what they want to do is they want to create a sales engine, a
Right.
sustainable business model, right? We work with companies that need more sales in general, or
Yes.
would like to optimize their sales, meaning they have tons of leads, but their sales team isn't really
Yes.
closing on them.
Something's
We
missing.
help
Yeah.
something's missing. We help them optimize that. So we again we work with a lot of different companies in different verticals. We work with CPAs, law firms. We have an aviation company. We have, oh my God, a travel app company. Just again, several companies that we work with, and for the most part, it's all B2B most of the time.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's where I would say our specialty is. So if your product, service, or that you're offering out there is a B2B, such as yourself, or you have other
Yes.
clients that come to you, I think that's where we're going to be the most value, for someone. And again, if you don't know, you can either reach out to Marie, she'll be able to point you in my direction if it's something, or just shoot me out a quick email. I'd be happy to answer questions, and if it's warranted, we can sit down for 15, 20 minutes and have a conversation about your business, and if I can help you, I can help you. Does that make
Yep.
sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Awesome,
love
awesome,
that.
cool.
Awesome.
Aw-
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, we are pretty much about the 45-minute mark. So I think it's a pretty good. Is there any other last minute thoughts? Anything that you want to share
um,
with our audience before we kind of wrap up the interview?
yeah, I would probably say, um, being an entrepreneur is messy. you know it really is.
Yes.
It really
Yes.
is, but it's very
Painful
rewarding.
sometimes.
It's messy, it's painful. It can be
Yeah.
painful. I wouldn't say it's painful, but it is definitely messy. It's got a lot of ups and downs. You have to
Yes,
be
it
in a
does.
space, in the right space, to deal with a lot of those challenges. And I think that's why it's it's of more value to have a coach or a mentor, to have that one person that you can go to and kind of decompress, or say, hey,
True.
I'm
True.
facing these things, and they've already seen it or heard it through someone else, and they can maybe not give you the answer that your industry needs or your vertical or whatever the case is, but they can say, hey, listen, I've heard of this, or I've seen this. And that opens doors. It is messy. It is messy. You got to carry around a lot of bounty and a lot of, like napkins and things like that, and wipe things off and wipe off your lenses and clean them so you can see the right path. I'm serious. It's
Yes.
messy. It is messy. And so having the right help, having the right support, sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's family, sometimes it's mentors, coaches. Sometimes again, it's an agency like yours, right? A business consulting agency like yours or mine. That
Yeah.
makes all the difference in the world. That's going to tell you, hey, listen, we've seen this challenge before. Don't worry, don't fret. We still need to push forward. We still need to keep going, right? No sense in crying over spilled milk.
Right.
Sometimes you need to
Exactly.
hear those words. Sometimes you really
Yes.
do. And because as an entrepreneur, again, being messy, you think, oh, am I gonna regain from this, or am I gonna
Right. You start doubting yourself.
you
Yeah.
start that
Yeah.
is part of it. And you need to have folks in your corner that can walk you through, not tell you what you want to hear either, because you
Right.
don't want
But
that.
it
You
is.
want someone
Yes.
that can apply, measure twice, cut once. Also, you want to be able to be in that space, because it is draining emotionally, mentally. Running a business, being an entrepreneur, um, it's killer. It's killer. But the upside, I think, is if you have a passion, a mission, a goal, and I would say more so than anything else, like if your business has a goal or passion or vision,
Yes.
at the end of the road or even during the journey, you're going to be able to look back and go, okay, I've done a lot, and man, I've done some great things and I've laid out a lot of value for folks, right?
Right.
When you look back and you see all the good things that you've done, it makes it worthwhile.
Absolutely.
It's
Yes.
not it's not always about the monetary. A lot of times it's, just the
Yes.
freedom sometimes, or just
Yes.
the freedom that you're offering other people with your services or products, right? So it's all encompassing. It's not always monetary, it's not always financial. At least that's what I've learned.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. But it's gonna get messy. Just be prepared for it. Bring some napkins. And just, yeah, just and some water, and stay hydrated, and go. That's it. Yeah. Stay hydrated and go. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You
It
know.
is a marathon. You're right. You're right.
You know.
And it's so funny. Some of the key things that you mentioned, and some of the stuff that I shared as well from my journey,
Okay.
the first episode. So that's great. I mean, this is the whole point why I wanted to have entrepreneurs come and talk about it, because I think there's so much similarities when we're going through it. What we're all facing it in different times, maybe, but there's that replication of, like, oh, you felt this, and I felt it, and then someone else felt it, and like,
Sure.
okay, so this is the norm for this type of life,
Right.
because it's a lifestyle you're getting into that
It's a
most people don't
lifestyle.
understand.
It's a
It is a
lifestyle.
lifestyle.
Yeah. Listen, it is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. You're absolutely right. Um, and it's messy. And so just go move forward and have fun with it. I think that was the one thing right before you and I hopped on. As we spoke, it was like, look, just unscripted. Don't worry about it. Let's just have fun and provide value, right? Because
Yep.
and I said, well, kind of like being an entrepreneur. Exactly what I do. I have fun and provide value. Nothing
Exactly.
different. So I'm happy that I hopped on. And I'm happy that I was of value to the listeners and to your audience. And again, if you have any questions, it all it takes is an email or a phone call.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to connect with you, and just point you in the right direction. 90% of the time, I can't help folks. It's not within my wheelhouse. But that 90%, I would say probably 89% of those folks, I point them in a direction,
Right.
hoping that
Right.
it's the right direction, right? There's the off
Yes.
chance that one person or that 1% I haven't heard, haven't seen, it's just like, oh, I just don't know. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
don't know it all. You know,
Yeah,
I
of
don't know
course.
it all. So
Yes. We have to be humble enough to accept that we don't know
agree.
everything, but we know someone who knows how to solve that problem.
And that is 1,000%, because we made
Yes.
it a point, to create great connections,
Yes.
in a lot of different verticals. And so we connecting one person to the other person is also very important. And I wouldn't say life saving, but probably business saving a lot of times. You never
Yes.
know. You never know. So
Yeah.
awesome, Marie. Hey, I really appreciate you having me. It's almost 11 o'clock. I gotta hop off soon.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
got a
We're
call.
going to just wrap up the show right now. So, yeah, I'm very happy that you were here, Maurice. It was great chat, and congrats on delivering excellence to your clients every single day.
Ooh,
And to all our viewers and our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. Please remember to subscribe, follow, like, and share the podcast, and so that the content reaches as many people as possible, and we can help them as well. So let's empower each other through our experiences. Until the next episode, have a wonderful and blessed rest of your week.